What happens when the dream wedding becomes a front-page scandal splashed across Tinseltown tabloids? In this episode of Hollywood Divorce Files, we explore the story of Debbie Reynolds and Eddie Fisher's divorce. Both were the parents of Carrie Fisher, who portrayed the legendary Princess Leia in the original Star Wars films. Their divorce involves a notorious love triangle between them and Hollywood superstar Elizabeth Taylor. What began as a storybook marriage between Debbie Reynolds and Eddie Fisher soon unraveled into a web of scandal, ultimately ending in divorce. Debbie Reynolds was the beloved star of the 1952 musical romantic comedy film Singing in the Rain. By 1958, she was on top of the world. She was a rising Hollywood actress, happily married to singer Eddie Fisher, had 2 children, and enjoying life with a picture-perfect family. But by 1959, her world came crashing down. Rumors of Eddie Fisher's affair with Elizabeth Taylor spread like wildfire through Hollywood, igniting a sensational scandal and leading to a very public divorce. What caused this headline-making drama that shook Hollywood to its core? Stay tuned as we uncover the details behind the unraveling of Debbie Reynolds and Eddie Fisher's fairy tale romance. Mary Frances Debbie Reynolds was born on April 1, 1932, in El Paso, Texas, to humble beginnings. Debbie was a Girl Scout, and once said she wanted to die as the world's oldest Girl Scout. By the 1950s, she had transformed into America's sweetheart. As a rising star, Reynolds made her mark in MGM musical comedies. Alongside a thriving career, she developed a close friendship with Elizabeth Taylor, another big MGM star. During their late teens, both went to school together at MGM's studio lot. Even though their personalities were quite different, both soon became close friends. Miss Reynolds first crossed paths with the then-famous singer Eddie Fisher overseas while entertaining American troops during the Korean War. Born on August 10, 1928, Eddie Fisher was celebrated for his smooth tenor voice, which earned him immense popularity. He became a teen idol and one of the most successful recording artists of the early 1950s, selling millions of records and surpassing even the Beatles and Elvis in hits. His chart-topping hits include Thinking of You, Oh My Papa, Lady of Spain, and Wish You Were Here. By 1957, Fisher was also hosting his own TV program, The Eddie Fisher Show. Debbie and Eddie's early courtship was a whirlwind of Hollywood glamour, filled with dates at star-studded parties, film premieres, and press events. In their early years together, the couple embraced a quieter domestic life, often enjoying their time at home. So enamored were they that they began referring to themselves as Prince and Princess, a nickname first coined by the press. Yet, beneath the surface, cracks in their relationship began to show, cracks that some predicted from the very start. In 1955, Debbie Reynolds co-starred with Frank Sinatra in the comedy film The Tender Trap. During filming, Sinatra offered her some candid advice about love. At the time, Reynolds was likely already engaged to Eddie Fisher and was thrilled about the prospect of marriage. However, Sinatra was not as optimistic. In a 2015 interview with People magazine, Reynolds recalled Sinatra warning her, "Oh, don't marry Eddie, we're not faithful." It was advice Reynolds would later wish she had heeded. Reynolds was already a rising star in Hollywood, with notable performances in 2 Weeks with Love, a 1950 romantic musical comedy film, and the global sensation Singing in the Rain in 1952. She married Eddie Fisher in 1955, and the couple had their first child, Carrie Fisher, the following year. Their marriage seemed like a picture-perfect Hollywood dream. Reynolds and Fisher were frequently photographed alongside their close friends, Elizabeth Taylor and Mike Todd. The two couples often spent weekends together enjoying barbecues and double dates. When Elizabeth Taylor married Mike Todd in 1957, Eddie Fisher served as Todd's best man, and Debbie Reynolds stood by Taylor's side as the matron of honor. The bond between the two couples was so strong that when Reynolds gave birth to a son in 1958, they named him Todd in honor of their friendship. However, the happy moments were short-lived. When Debbie and Eddie married in 1955, she was a virgin and living with her parents, while Eddie was far more experienced. Rumors circulated that their union had been orchestrated by MGM, which was eager to market them as America's sweethearts. While Debbie believed in the relationship at first, cracks began to form after the birth of their first child, Carrie Fisher. Eddie was often absent, and Debbie longed for a second child. Her frustration grew as Eddie showed little interest in intimacy. On a vacation to Italy after getting him drunk, Debbie finally convinced him to sleep with her. That one night was enough, and 9 months later, their son Todd was born. Despite building a family together, deeper issues plagued their marriage. Eddie reportedly found Debbie's lack of a strong sex drive frustrating, while at the same time, Debbie's booming career made Eddie jealous and only added to the tension. By this time, she was one of Hollywood's brightest stars, with both her acting and singing careers flourishing. Eddie, however, struggled to cope with her success. The jealousy reached a boiling point when Debbie's song, Tammy, from the 1957 romantic comedy film, Tammy and the Bachelor, soared to the top of the charts. Eddie, consumed with envy, stopped speaking to her altogether. Their relationship, which once seemed so glamorous, was quickly unraveling under the weight of resentment and unmet expectations. Nearly 4 weeks after the birth of Debbie's and Eddie's son, Todd Fisher, tragedy struck their close friends, Elizabeth Taylor and Mike Todd. On March 22, 1958, Mike Todd was killed in a plane crash when his private jet went down in New Mexico. Devastated by the news, Debbie urged Eddie to fly to Elizabeth's side to offer comfort. The Fishers had been close friends with Elizabeth Taylor and Mike Todd, often spending time together as two of Hollywood's most celebrated couples. When Debbie heard about Mike Todd's untimely death, she rushed to Elizabeth's house to offer her support. In a gesture of friendship, Debbie offered to care for Elizabeth's 3 children while she grieved the loss of her husband. During those weeks, now caring for 5 children in total, Debbie noticed that Eddie was spending an increasing amount of time at Elizabeth's house. Despite this, she was not concerned. After all, Eddie had been close to Mike as well, and she trusted that his intentions were purely to help their grieving friend. Things took a strange turn when Debbie Reynolds attended a Hollywood dinner party and overheard whispers among the guests. Everyone was sort of whispering like, "Does she know?" Reynolds later recounted. "So I put 2 and 2 together because I could hear certain words. Eddie, Elizabeth, and such." That night, the Hollywood elite at the party gossiped till dawn about Debbie, Eddie, and Elizabeth. On September 20th, 1958, on the eve of the release of the drama movie, Cat on a Hot Tin Roof, Reynolds was at home with her children. She knew that Elizabeth Taylor was in New York for the film's premiere, and she believed that Eddie was away on tour. Feeling lonely, she decided to call Elizabeth at her hotel to chat, but to her shock, Eddie answered the phone. Suddenly, a lot of things clicked into place, Reynolds recalled. "I could hear Elizabeth's voice in the background asking who was calling. They were obviously in bed together. I yelled at him, 'Roll over, darling, and let me speak to Elizabeth.'" Until that moment, Reynolds had ignored the signs of her husband's infidelity. But now, stunned and heartbroken, she realized the rumors were true. Elizabeth Taylor was having an affair with Eddie Fisher. In a 1988 interview with Entertainment Tonight, Reynolds admitted she had never believed Taylor would ruin her marriage. "We were friends for years and years," she explained, "but there was a lapse of time when she took Eddie to live with her because she liked him too." The scandal escalated, and when confronted about the rumors, Elizabeth Taylor surprisingly did not deny them. "I don't go about breaking up marriages," she said. "You can't break up a happy marriage. Debbie's and Eddie's never has been." When pressed further, asking if she loved Eddie, Taylor replied, "I like him very much. I felt happier and more like a human being these past 2 weeks than I have since Mike's death." Then when asked what Mike Todd, Taylor's late husband, might think about her affair, Taylor's response was blunt. "Well, Mike is dead and I'm alive." She added, "What do you expect me to do? Sleep alone?" Taylor's unapologetic attitude shocked many, but it revealed her priorities. For the first time, she chose to be with a man despite the controversy, simply because she wanted to. Eddie Fisher, who had grown frustrated in his marriage to Debbie Reynolds, a woman who admitted she was not highly sexual, was thrilled to be with someone like Taylor. As Fisher himself put it, Taylor had the face of an angel and the morals of a truck driver. When Eddie Fisher asked Debbie Reynolds for a divorce, she warned him that Elizabeth Taylor would leave him within 18 months. Miss Reynolds was wrong. It took more than 30 months for Eddie Fisher and Elizabeth Taylor to split and later divorce. Following the shocking revelation of Eddie's and Elizabeth's adulterous affair, Debbie reported to MGM for guidance. The studio quickly took the side of the wronged wife, even though the homewrecker, Elizabeth Taylor, was also under their contract. Elizabeth Taylor, however, was known for looking out for herself and remained defiant. While Liz Taylor stayed in seclusion at her agent's house, reportedly surviving on takeout chili from Chasen's restaurant, Debbie leaned into her public image as the dignified good girl. She attended daily photo ops to show she was not hiding. Meanwhile, Fisher and Taylor did most of the talking, while Debbie kept a public silence on the scandal. At MGM's direction, Debbie made a show of trying to save her marriage. She and Eddie were seen attending marriage counseling sessions, with photographers and columnists documenting every step. However, the pretense did not last long. The following day, Debbie stepped out of her house with her daughter Carrie in tow. When reporters asked if Eddie was returning, Debbie faced the cameras and announced, "He isn't coming home." The next day, she filed for divorce. The public's fascination with the love triangle only grew after Eddie began openly comforting Elizabeth Taylor following Mike Todd's tragic plane crash. A year later, in the face of mounting pressure, Debbie agreed to a quick divorce, allowing Eddie and Elizabeth to get married. Debbie Reynolds and Eddie Fisher's 5-year marriage officially ended in 1959. That same year, Eddie wasted no time marrying Elizabeth Taylor after the divorce was finalized. Despite the scandal, Debbie chose not to harbor resentment toward Taylor. In a 1983 People magazine interview, she reflected, "I never felt bitter about Elizabeth. A man doesn't leave a woman for another woman unless he wants to go." Debbie Reynolds was heartbroken over Eddie Fisher's infidelity. The adulterous affair was one of Hollywood's most infamous scandals. Miss Reynolds managed to carry on as a single mother to 2 small children, while enduring the media frenzy surrounding her marriage. Despite the turmoil, she continued working on films, balancing her career with raising her family. The public was stunned by the scandal. Eddie and Elizabeth were vilified. Eddie was labeled a philandering, opportunistic loser, and Elizabeth was branded as a bad girl, a homewrecker, and a slut. Meanwhile, Debbie was embraced with global love and sympathy. The good girl, the innocent victim, and the single mom. Despite her heartbreak, Debbie Reynolds found the strength to rebuild her life, dedicating herself to her children and her career. In a 1988 Entertainment Tonight interview, Miss Reynolds reflected on Eddie's behavior during the scandal. Eddie always wanted to be Mike Todd. He wanted to be just like Mike, outgoing and beloved by everyone. Mike was an entrepreneur and a great producer, which Eddie aspired to be. When Mike passed, Eddie became Mike. He started smoking cigars and drinking. Eddie had never done those things before, but suddenly he adopted this new persona. Naturally, Elizabeth, who was grieving deeply, was drawn to Eddie. I thought he was simply filling the terrible void for her. The scandal had lasting effects on the careers of everyone involved. For Reynolds and Taylor, the ordeal only heightened their appeal, making them even bigger stars and allowing them to command higher salaries for their films. Eddie Fisher, however, faced a starkly different outcome. His reputation was irreparably damaged by his decision to leave his wife and children for Elizabeth Taylor. His television variety show was not renewed in 1959, and his career devolved into performing at nightclubs and lounges. The public's outrage over the affair lingered, and the friendship between Reynolds and Taylor remained fractured. Following her split from Fisher, Debbie remarried in 1960 to Harry Carl, a millionaire businessman. The rift between the former high school friends Debbie Reynolds and Elizabeth Taylor remained even after Taylor divorced Eddie in 1964, following her highly publicized affair with Richard Burton during the filming of Cleopatra in 1963. Debbie Reynolds never reconciled with Eddie Fisher. However, in an unexpected twist of fate, she crossed paths with Elizabeth Taylor again in 1966 while aboard the transatlantic cruise ship Queen Elizabeth. Despite their fraught history, the 2 women made amends. Soon after, Reynolds and her new husband, Harry Carl, were seen socializing with Taylor and her then-husband, Richard Burton, aboard the ship. Unfortunately, Debbie's and Harry's marriage ended in divorce in 1973. Eddie Fisher, on the other hand, remarried 3 more times after his divorce from Taylor. His tarnished reputation remained and was never restored after his divorce from Reynolds. The divorce between Debbie Reynolds and Eddie Fisher remains as one of the most infamous scandals in Hollywood history. Fisher's betrayal and the unraveling of their marriage stand as one of the most legendary tales of heartbreak and betrayal. A saga worthy of the silver screen, their story has since been etched into the annals of Hollywood's most scandalous divorces. So, what do you think of Debbie Reynolds and Eddie Fisher's notorious Hollywood divorce? Share your thoughts. We would love to hear them. Thank you for watching. Hope you found this video informative and entertaining. Please subscribe, like, share, and comment. We do like to know and hear your feedback. We also have merchandise available for purchase on our Teespring store. Link to our store is in the description section below. And if you have the means, please consider supporting us on Patreon, where we post bonus material. Till next time, this is the Peeping Loony saying cheers and have a good day.